Snapchat on their own at our meeting this time next week. But I should put on record that we have taken the formal decision today that we will use our powers to summon a witness from Snapchat in the event that they're not cooperative with the committee in coming to give their evidence. This is important given the prevalence of children's use of Snapchat and their relevance to the debate that we are having as a nation and within this committee at the moment. But I'm very grateful to the three witnesses who have joined us today. Can I invite you to introduce yourselves to the committee, please, starting with Alistair Law.
Thank you, Chair, and fully share your view on the importance of being able to give evidence in this debate. I'm Alistair Law. I'm Director of Public Policy for Northern Europe at TikTok.
Thank you. Rebecca Stimson.
Good morning. I'm Rebecca Stimson. I'm the Director of Public Policy UK for Meta.
Thank you. And joining us virtually, we have Laura Higgins.
Thank you for inviting me and facilitating the virtual joining. Hi, I'm Laura Higgins. I'm the Senior Director of Community Safety and Civility at Roblox, an immersive gaming and creation platform.
Thank you very much. I'll begin our questioning this morning. The Prime Minister met some of the most senior representatives of each of your companies, along with some other companies, at Downing Street last Thursday to discuss children's use of social media. He told those representatives that things cannot go on like this. Do you agree with that? Can I start with you, Rebecca Stimson, please?
Yeah, we were really pleased to be invited to that conversation. Very important, timely conversation, as is this one today. We welcomed the opportunity at that to just lay out the steps we have taken, particularly around 13 to 18-year-olds on our platforms. And I'm happy to, sure we will get into that perhaps in this conversation this morning. But we also absolutely agree that this is not a job that is finished and done, unfortunately, and that there is always more to do to ensure safety, particularly as technology involved. So we recognise the really real concerns that were expressed at that roundtable, and we look forward to working with the government and Parliament as we all continue through the consultation process on what next steps might be the best idea.
Thank you. Alistair Law.
So look, I represented TikTok at that meeting in my capacity as Director of TikTok UK Board, and I was very pleased to do so. Share the concerns that the Prime Minister set out, and it was a number of different concerns that, again, I'm sure we'll go and talk through in more detail. I was pleased to be able to give an overview of the age-appropriate experience that TikTok provides under 16s on our platform, but completely agree with the notion that safety is a race that's never run, and that this is an area that we'll continue to review the evidence of and continue to make changes and invest in ensuring that children on our platform are protected.
Thank you. And Laura Higgins.
Thank you. So I understand that the meeting held by the Prime Minister was specifically in relation to social media platforms. So we weren't invited to that conversation. We are, however, very pleased to be part of this broader conversation. We share the committee's commitment to keeping children safe online. We work very closely with, we want to work with the committee and with government to make sure that we're all helping to contribute to this conversation, to make sure that any rules that come out of the process are proportionate and well targeted. We recognise as a platform that is used widely by children that it carries real responsibility, and we don't take that lightly. So we're looking forward to the conversation and sharing some of the work that we're doing.
If I may say, the tone of those initial answers is very much that there is work to do, but this is a kind of managed business as usual progression with some monitoring and possibly some tweaks. Alistair Law, the committee's been briefed today on a report coming from a police investigation that children on your platform are being groomed into sexual activity, are selling themselves through that grooming, and that content of that nature via TikTok is ending up on the dark web in the hands of predators. Do you think monitoring, engaging in a debate and taking some further steps is enough in that context?
In the context that you mentioned just there, we absolutely abhor that kind of activity. It has no place on our platform. When we became aware of the report that you mentioned, which was first reported in the Telegraph, we immediately contacted the Home Office, the National Crime Agency, Crime Authority, and within a couple of days we're talking directly to the police force itself. We have a number of different steps that prevents and acts against the kind of activity that you've just described, which I'm very happy to go into. But in terms of taking that report and trying to make sure that we identify direct harm and learn lessons from it, we were speaking to the police force within a couple of days. We have law enforcement teams that are designed to engage directly with police forces so that if there's any violative activity that is taking place on our platform, we can respond to it in real time. We can then continue to build our learning because, as you say, the predators and the objectionable bad actors in this situation are always going to be looking to use whatever means they can to achieve their objectives. We have a whole set of things that we do on our platform. Use of content moderation, taking down and prevention of any live streaming by somebody under the age of 18, additional checks as to how old they should be. But when we identify activity that is seeking to circumvent that, we want to know about that as quickly as possible, and we want to be able to take action and close any gaps as quickly as possible as well. So we're working with the police force, OCCIT, to further understand what is it that they've learned, particularly in an off-platform environment, because as you say, sometimes what we find is that people will be trying to direct people off-platform, and the more that we can learn about what takes place in closed spaces, be it the dark web or encrypted messaging services, the more that we can strengthen our measures. To completely agree with you, that needs robust direct action, and it's action that we're taking.
And again, that response might be a reasonable and credible response if this was a exceptional type of activity that was occurring sometimes and you were reacting immediately to something that was occurring sometimes. That the report says the abuse and sexualisation of children is frequently noted taking place on the platform itself. Within just a few days of reviewing offender behaviours on the platform, OSIT noted hundreds of accounts dedicated to the sexualisation of children, many of which specifically focused on those from the UK. So this is normal across your platform. This is not exceptional harmful behaviour that's happening occasionally. Why aren't you stopping it?
So, as I say, we're very grateful for the report, and in particular for being able to learn the ways in which bad actors try and evolve.
Why did you need the police to tell you what's happening on your own platform?
So we constantly look at trying to make sure that we are enforcing the rules that we have with all of the different content moderation approaches that we have. Just to sort of set it out for a minute, anytime any video is uploaded for TikTok, it is scanned on upload by auto-moderating technologies. They will look for a range of different harms, anything that breaches our community guidelines. And there are certain things that actually AI models have been pretty effective at being able to identify. Nudity is a great example. It's prohibited on our platform in general, leaving aside obviously even see some of the most abhorrent images, but it's prohibited in general, and we're quite effective with our AI models because they have good training data and they're very effective at blocking it on upload. We take other measures such as ensuring that under 16s don't have access at all to direct messaging, and where direct messaging is allowed when you're over the age of 16, still ensuring that we're proactively scanning any images for known or novel CSAM as well. None of that means that we have completed our work in terms of preventing activity on that, because of the fact that people evolve their approaches. And what we have met with OSIT about and are continuing to learn more of is what are the evolutions that predators are undertaking to try and circumvent approaches and to evolve their behaviour so that, maybe they're using keywords that are discussed on the dark web, and so we need to understand those keywords so that we can block them and prevent people from off-platforming on that basis. It's a constant level of evolution, but I do want to assure the committee that we are dedicating the priority resources on a significant level to tackling it.
I just wanted to drill into that example kind of early in the evidence session, because I think it demonstrates that with the best will in the world, you can't control it, and you haven't been controlling it. It's not, we can't accept that level of harmful activity is normal across the platform, and that you're doing best endeavours to make sure that it doesn't happen when it continues to happen. Would you agree that the approaches that you're deploying so far aren't working, and this is something that as a platform like yours simply can't get a grip on, and therefore we need different approaches to the ones that have currently been taken to keep our children safe.
I think any single example of harm relating to that kind of activity occurring on the platform is obviously a failure and something that we need to directly address. At scale, the kind of moderation approaches that I was talking about mean that of the violative content that is available on our platform in general, 99% of it is taken down on a proactive basis under our activity, and close to 90% of that is taken down with zero views on pure automation, so not even involving humans as part of that. Now, is that a complete and total deliverance of what we need to do in this area? No, and we need to continue to work on that. But from a scale perspective, the models, the investment that we have in AI and our content moderation approach is doing huge work to ensure that our community is kept safe. Our responsibility is to continue to enforce, invest in improvements in that enforcement, and, as I say, work with partners like this police force, like the NCA, to make sure that as bad actors evolve their techniques, we're aware of that as soon as possible, and we can put our own measures in place to address them.
Let me go to Chris now.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time today. The previous iteration of this committee reported in 2023 about a distinct concern about the harms of screen time. In fact, they specifically said, and there's an overwhelming weight of evidence submitted to us suggesting that the harms of screen time and social media use significantly outweighs the benefits for young children. So I just wondered whether you would agree with that assessment, and if you do, or even if you don't, what benefits do you see that young people gain from using your service? And that's to anyone wants to answer it, really. Rebecca, do you want to go first?
Yes, of course. So I think there's lots of benefits that people gain. You can see on our platforms, on Instagram in particular, people are following things like BBC Bite Size, some of Britain's best institutions, museums. There's great tutoring and school and education support, which I know will be particularly relevant to this committee. I think what we've generally found is that clearly screen time can be a problem if someone is passively scrolling. Overconsumption of anything can be a problem. I think it depends a bit what you're doing, and because of that, we have this thing called teen accounts, where we have defaulted all 13 to 18-year-olds into a much more restricted experience. We give people a nudge after an hour, or teens rather, a nudge after an hour of being on the platform. It's muted overnight, and we have parents control so they can set the right screen time for their particular family, and that can be down to as little as 15 minutes a day on the app. So I think there's a mixed picture about screen time concerns. We absolutely hear it, and we've tried to respond to that by giving people choices.
Can I just come back on that really quickly, Rebecca, because it's interesting what you said about the difference, the experience you give to teens. I mean, I've got Facebook because I'm that age, right? And I think there's a real danger to spend a lot of time scrolling because the algorithms are specifically designed to give you more content that you want. So I get a lot of stand-up comedy because that's what I'm interested in, right? So is there? And the problem with that, I think, is that potentially extends the amount of time people spend, on a screen, potentially to levels that aren't actually good for them. So, have you done anything for younger users of your accounts to tackle that potentially addictive algorithm problem?
Yeah, so as I said, our recommender system is designed to offer you connections with your friends and your family and the things you enjoy, and that can, as you say, lead to if you like comedy and it keeps giving you that. So what we've done, particularly as I say, for 13 to 18-year-olds who have been defaulted into a more restrictive set of restrictions, they get told after an hour to leave the app. The app is muted overnight, so between, I think it's 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. But also we've given, that account is then managed by a parent, and they have full control over the time. So if they felt like they wanted to restrict their child's time online, it can be reduced to as little as 15 minutes a day. What we haven't enforced that centrally, because there are lots of examples of young people making really great use of these apps to connect with issues they care about, for activism, for hobbies and interests and education. So we think it's better to leave it, to give some control to the families over it. But like I said, we interrupt after an hour.
Is there, just in terms of the idea of having a teen account, my concern would be, is there not a danger that young people, teenagers, just set up an account? How do you, there's probably an answer to this and I don't know what the answer is, how do you ensure that people under the age of 18 or under the age of 16 don't just set up an adult account? How do you control that?
So we have a whole range of ways that we try to mitigate that. I think it is an absolutely accurate age assurance. I think we recognise as an industry-wide challenge, but we take a multifaceted approach to ensuring that people aren't lying about their age. One thing that AI has really helped us advance recently is that if you lie and you say your birthday is 1975, and it can then scan and detect what you're doing and your friends and what you're posting and image, and it has a very good way of telling that you're not and you've lied. So then you are defaulted into that experience. And so we recognise that challenge, but that we try as much as possible to prevent people from setting up fake accounts or accounts where they're claiming to be an adult and they're not. And then now, as I said, in this new restricted experience, it's linked to a parent's account who can then have a great deal of autonomy and control over what's happening for that teen on our platforms.
Okay. Alice, same question really, just on the general point about screen time, but also what are you, on Rebecca's point, what are you doing, what is TikTok doing to deal with the issue of age verification?
Sure. I just wanted to go back to the first part of your question quickly on the kind of positive elements of our platform. Which is obviously the ability to create, discover, express yourself, but very much from a learning perspective. We introduced on the homepage a STEM feed in 2024, so this is curated content specifically on science, technology, engineering and maths. It's available to all under 18s by default. We find that a little under a third of them visit on a weekly basis. TikTok has been a place where communities like BookTok have created huge levels of new interest in reading, which is, I know, something else that this committee has looked at previously as well. And so I think that the benefits of connection, of community and expressions of creativity are meaningful and material. But of course, we recognise what it is that you're saying around concerns around screen time. We also have an age-appropriate experience. So the experience that you get on TikTok if you are 15 is very different to if you are 25. That actually starts by ensuring that you have a default 1 hour screen time cap. So you won't be able to use the app after an hour. Within that, we also have screen time break recommenders. So if you've been using it for half an hour straight, then a pop-up will come up saying you've been using this for 30 minutes. You can snooze that, you can dismiss it or choose to take a different view. We also have a notification curfew, so nothing comes through as a notification on the app from 9 p.m. overnight. If you're using the app at 10 p.m, we have a thing called Sleep Hours Reminder, which is a full screen takeover that prompts people that it might be time to put down the phone, move away, go to bed. It actually takes them through a meditative breathing exercise as a way to kind of shift their energy as well. So there's a huge amounts of kind of individual nudges and adding up to a collective that if you are 15 on the app, and I haven't mentioned the kind of features that are restricted like direct messaging and going live, I think we can leave that for safety discussions, but if you are 15 on the app, there's a whole host of things that are acting together to present a balanced and healthy relationship with the app.
On the hour cap that you mentioned, so after an hour, does does it close completely, or does it? And if that's the case, how long after that can you then open up the app again?
So as default, it's an hour cumulative over a 24-hour period, and yes, it will tell you that you've reached your limit and it will close the app. It isn't completely mandatory, but I think what we have done, and when we designed it, we actually did so with the Boston Children's Hospital Digital Wellness Task Force that they have there. And we asked them, because there isn't actually an awful lot of academic research out there that says, what should a level of screen time be for somebody who is, and this is applicable for people between the ages of 13 and 15. And so as part of their research, they alighted on an hour as a starting point. I think, as Rebecca said, the ability to go beyond that, lower than that. We also have parental tools, so that if you have linked with your child on our family pairing feature, then you have additional levels of control. You can set lower screen time caps, you can set blocks of time away if you don't want people to access it during school hours, for example. But our focus is very, very much thinking about the multifaceted different ways that people might be using the app and might be nudged into considering their use of it so that it's balanced.
Thank you. Because to come back to the initial part of the question, so the previous committee found that social media and screen time does pose harm. Would you agree with that to be the case? And I'm talking in terms of, I think what you're saying is, you put that hour cap in place for a reason. So you would say you would have concerns of a young person particularly using social media for a longer period of time in a 24-hour period?
I think, as Rebecca said, the idea of overconsumption of anything is something that we want to be concerned about. We will always be led by the evidence on this, but I think that the evidence is contested, be it UNICEF findings as well, that, you know, screen time as a whole, and then particularly the idea of a particular limit, I don't think has been, you know, firmly established from an academic perspective. I know you're hearing from academics later on at the moment. So from our perspective, putting in place a range of different measures that act together and giving people agency as well. So, you know, you can think of the interventions that we have in sort of three buckets. There's some stuff that is just on and you can't change it. The notification bit that I was talking about earlier after 9 p.m, or the screen hours report that you're given at the end of the week, that's just on. Then there's things that are on by default. You could opt out if you want, but I mentioned, for example, the full screen takeover meditation breathing exercise. We found that 98% of under 16s kept that on, and as a result we extended that to under 18s as a whole. And then you have things that you can opt into, like the family pairing parental control. So all of them are kind of little nudges, little features that collectively add up to something I think quite powerful.
Yeah, and I take your point about the evidence, but I mean, I always mention this in every select committee, but I did used to be a teacher, and one of the things that I'm concerned about, and Rebecca touched upon it briefly in her statement, was about, you know, the amount of time young people are spending on these platforms late into the night. Mm-hmm. So you've mentioned that you've got this 9 p.m. curfew, call it that, but actually that isn't mandatory, so there is a danger that young people will ignore that. Have you got any evidence to suggest, I mean, you said, I think you said 98% didn't change that function, right, but have you got any evidence in terms of that, you know, but they could still then go back on it afterwards, presumably. So do you think there's more you could do to ensure that young people aren't, you know, potentially sitting up scrolling through TikTok, whatever it is, for till 2 o'clock in the morning, and then, you know, the impact that will obviously have on their education? So what's your thoughts on that?
So there's a couple of different things in there. There's the 9 p.m. notification cut-off. Yeah. So at that point, you won't get anything that buzzes via our app that says, you know, you've received a message or anything like that. Then there's the 10 p.m. sleep hours reminder, right, which, yes, you're right, you can dismiss. It will then come back, I think it's either 10 or 20 minutes later, as another takeover as well. It's not at the moment mandatory. I think this goes back to my point around we will be led by evidence, and so, you know, it's something that we introduced, I think, probably around about a year ago, saw a good deal of take up, and we're constantly working both with our partners. I mentioned the Boston Children's Hospital, but also we have our own safety advisory councils, including a global youth safety council, to evaluate what more we can do. What young people tell us primarily is that they want agency, they want the ability to set their experience, and that's why we have both these default settings but also a whole range of additional tools that you can, you know, kind of opt into. We've got a digital wellbeing centre, which I haven't touched upon, but I can go into more detail later, where, you know, we create missions and people can earn badges on the basis of educating themselves about the features that they have, like the screen time cap and the ability to set limits. So there's a whole panoply of different ways that we're thinking about trying to come together, but of course, as more evidence comes out and as we learn more, we will do more.
Last question, then I'll come to Rebecca. Just briefly, I mean, do you think part of the challenge, you know, we talk about the evidence, but the reality is social media has grown at such a quick, you know, I remember, you know, when I was at school, was it MySpace? I mean, that died off. But do you think part of the issue is that, you know, these services, these social media platforms are being developed before the evidence of their impact has fully been understood? Do you think that's a potential challenge that young people face or users face?
So I think it's absolutely right that we exist in a very fast-moving industry, but I think that in part that's one of the reasons why we're continuing to invest in the features that I've outlined. Prior to working at TikTok, I did 10 years in the TV industry, and obviously, you know, there are more channels now than ever, and there are, you know, kind of a greater amount of content on streaming, etc. From our perspective, doing things like an hour screen time cap as default, a sleep hours reminder, etc., probably goes beyond what we see in other areas, be it TV, gaming, messaging. And part of the reason that we're doing that is because, you know, we're conscious of the potential impact, and we want to make sure that our users have both set features and then also tools available to them to guard against that.
Thank you. Sorry, Laura, I've kept you waiting. I apologise, Laura. Just on the initial question, just about obviously the predecessor committee. So it was a while ago I asked that question.
That's fine, thank you. So, I mean, for us, one of the things is we're not a social media platform. So the primary engagement that happens in Roblox, it happens within the experiences and games themselves. So we have children who are either actively playing with their friends, they're building and creating. They're not really passively consuming feeds and sort of, by algorithmic feeds. So that's one element. It really is about what people do, I think, when they're in these online spaces. But we absolutely agree, balance is everything. We really want to encourage this healthy kind of online and offline and physical activity, as well as the kind of creation and play that happens within Roblox. We have a suite of tools for parents, so they can set daily play limits, which then when they cut off, they don't come back on until the following day, as well as other ways that they can manage when and how their children are using Roblox. We don't serve any push notifications to under 13 users, and we also worked with our Roblox Teen Council to get their input around the wellbeing tools that they wanted. And very much, as Ali mentioned, we heard about their desire for agency. So we introduced do not disturb mode, so they can opt out if they just wanted some quiet times themselves. They have online status controls and their own screen time insights. What's been quite interesting hearing from the young people is that when they get that little bit older and perhaps the parents are a little less involved, the young people are still aware that they might be playing a little bit longer or, from time to time, and they really find those screen time insights very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I appreciate your slightly different platform in terms of social media, but obviously you've still got direct messaging, so there are still the potential challenges there. What do you do specifically to protect young people when it comes to that sort of direct messaging and the potential, bullying messages potentially they could get from other users? And also, just on the point that I made to Alistair about screen time, the nature of gaming is, it's addictive, and I don't, lowercase a addictive. You want to carry on, you want to get to the next level. So there is still that danger, isn't there, about potentially playing till 2 o'clock in the morning, and this isn't a new phenomenon. I remember kids playing on Grand Theft Auto, or whatever it might be. That's not a good example because they shouldn't be till 2 o'clock in the morning. So what are you doing to tackle that particular issue?
So we'll talk about the communication piece first.
Yeah,
so we have all communication is off by default for under 9s. We actually just launched a new feature called Roblox Kids and Roblox Select, which is our new age-based account frameworks. I'll talk a little more about that in a moment, hopefully. But Roblox Kids is really for the under 9s. It's a ring-fenced experience where they have games that are really specifically suited for their age group and no communication. In terms of direct messaging, communications are off by default. They are opt-in, and we need parental consent to access those messages. So that's just one piece. In terms of the kind of problematic use of any platform, of course, we don't want that to happen. We want people to be having a healthy and thriving time on the platform. So for the younger ones, as I mentioned, we do encourage parents to be involved. We take the responsibility for safety. That's where it sits with us. But parents also know what's right for their families. And so that's why we try to give them, that more granularity to manage what's right for each individual child. We really, what we see on our platform doesn't tend to be that very long play sessions. It tends to be more kind of weekends. It's kids getting together after school. We encourage and we work with expert organisations, for example, to create resources, to do guidance, to provide wellbeing tools for the community and for parents to try to prevent that from happening.
I'm going to go to Caroline in a moment, but can I just ask you very briefly that broadly within society, where there are behaviours and activities that are addictive, we say to adults, here are a bunch of regulations and interventions and advice and guidance that helps you to avoid getting into difficulty with that behaviour. We think about gambling, we think about alcohol, but we say to children, you can't go there at all. Why is this any different?
So there is no evidence directly that says that games are addictive by nature. We know that there is still a lot of work going on in that space. Anything that is consumed excessively is harmful, and so we would discourage that. We want to see this healthy balance of activity, but in the same way that parents perhaps would get involved with their kids around what they watch on TV and how long they would be allowed to watch that for, or what books they might read, and some of it might be supervised, some might be unsupervised. But there's always a conversation that happens around, it's time to go to bed now, please can we turn it off? And so we would really encourage those conversations to still be happening. We do appreciate for some young people there can be problematic online use. And so, we appreciate that the work that goes into, supporting organisations to prevent that from happening and providing support for those young people should they need it.
Would either of you like to respond on that broad question of what?
I'm happy to. Yeah. So we don't design Instagram or Facebook to be addictive, and independent research only recently in the US has shown that the vast majority of parents and teens using that platform find it to be a positive experience for some of the reasons we were just discussing. But similar to Laura's answer, I think we absolutely recognise that there can be risks of people misusing the platform and poor behaviours, and where that we do see that we have defaulted teens into a much more restricted experience and given parents the stronger ability to intervene. That includes things like time, but importantly it includes things like an ability to reset your teen's algorithm. If, for example, they're going down a rabbit hole of content that perhaps you as the parent might not think is healthy or suitable for them, you can completely reset that. So it's not the way our platforms are designed to operate, but that doesn't mean that we've waited and stopped, not had these tools built and made available.
Yeah, and I would share a couple of the views there. I don't think that there's been a clinical finding of addictiveness on this, but that doesn't mean that we don't recognise a responsibility to drive a healthy use, and that's why we have, I mentioned the variety of different things that we have in place as default. I think that we're the only major platform that has a screen time cap as default for under 16s of an hour, along with the other measures that I mentioned as well. So we're very cognizant of the potential for overconsumption, and we put in place measures as appropriate on that.
I mean, I would just say I think there'll be parents and indeed adults of all types watching this session who find that the claim that there is no evidence that this is not addictive, simply not a credible claim to make at all based on their experience. But I'll leave it there and go to Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. So I'd like to move on now to talk about a ban. And obviously a conversation that has been led by Australia going first, but we know that governments right across the world are now waking up to the dangers of social media and discussing how they're going to introduce a ban. Would you agree that the failure of companies like yourselves to protect children and young people adequately from addictive algorithms, violent content, sexual predators and so on has led to this worldwide push for a ban? And are you concerned that there could well be one coming in the UK as well? I'll start with you, Alistair.
So look, I think we recognise the concerns that you've just talked about, and I think what's really important in this debate is that there are a number of concerns, all valid, that come together. Concerns around harmful content, concerns around level of time spent, concerns around impact on well-being. Those are the sort of concerns that we and my trust and safety team, who are all kind of dedicated professionals. We've got people there who are clinical psychologists, people who are ex-law enforcement, people who have worked for NGOs on human trafficking and things, are dedicated to trying to deliver on. And safety, we were a later platform than many of our competitors, only launching in the UK in 2018, and we designed our platform from the start with safety in mind, both as a way to deliver for our users but also as a competitive advantage. But I recognise the level of concern. Our response to it is to set robust guidelines and enforce against them, create an age-appropriate experience, and I've spoken about some of the well-being elements that we have on there, but also from a safety perspective, there's additional content that can't be seen by under 16, something like graphic fictitious violence, for example, that might be available to over 18s but not to under 16s. I mentioned earlier direct messaging. That feature is completely turned off. You cannot access it if you're under the age of 16.
But you could access it if you were pretending to be under 16.
So similar to the answer that Rebecca gave earlier, we start from the perspective of if you're set at the App Store as being 12, under 13, which is the age that you can join TikTok, the app won't even appear. Then if you try and sign up, we'll ask for your date of birth with a neutral age gate, and if you put something in under the age of 13, then we'll block you from reapplying. Obviously, people will try and circumvent that, but we too default people into an under 18 content experience until we have the level of confidence using signals on our platform that they are the age they have said that they are. So we recognise, as Rebecca said, that this is an industry-wide challenge in terms of accuracy, but we adopt a kind of prudent approach to that. In terms of your question about the ban, I think that the UK government consultation is a thoughtful and considered one that is asking a wide range of questions and, importantly, of a wide range of services. Now, the OSA regulates 150,000 services by, I think, Ofcom's own measures. And, the three different buckets of concerns about harmful content, concerns about time spent, and concerns about well-being, are ones that are applicable to children's experience online as a whole. And so I think the most important thing that we think is, we've got a good model, setting rules and enforcing them, and an age-appropriate experience. Can you find a way to bring other services into that level of model and have a level of collective learning about what age-appropriate experiences look like? If you can't, then clearly for policymakers, for this committee, for government, a more robust option is possible, but one that I think needs to operate across the board if it's going to go to the heart of what it is that parents are concerned about.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yeah, so Facebook's one of the oldest of these apps around, been here for more than 20 years. Similar to what Alistair just said, we've had safety features and policies built in from the very beginning, and we work with hundreds of experts to design our products and policies, including here in the UK. I think the conversation at the moment just reflects that this is a sort of evolution of the same the concerns around safety, which are perfectly valid and legitimate. What we hear most consistently from parents is screen time, what content can my teen see, and who can contact them. Our teen accounts experience, which we've had since 2024, yes, that's right, reflects those concerns, both defaulting people in, because I think we also recognise quite overwhelming for parents. The average teen has about 40 apps on their phone, everything has different settings, everything has different things, so we have realised that it's actually much more helpful to default in and allow parents to come out if they choose to do so. Only those things can only be turned off for under 16s by the parent. But I think interesting things like, as we mentioned in the consultation, around what kind of features and functions are right for younger people. I think that's a kind of evolving conversation that we're really interested in having, that conversation to look at whether things like autoplay, infinite scroll, other features should now also be looked at. We have some restrictions on that already, but we're interested in where that conversation might go as the conversation evolves around the right measures for online safety for younger users.
And do you think ban is the right word? I mean, it's an interesting word, isn't it? Because we don't allow children to go into nightclubs because they would be exposed to alcohol and other harms. We don't allow children to drive a car. We don't allow them to smoke. We don't call it a ban. We don't say 14-year-olds are banned from going into nightclubs. We just say you have to be 18 to go to a nightclub. Do you think that, given all everything that we're seeing with children's problematic use of social media and the effect it's having on mental health and well-being, the fact that 93% of parents believe it's harmful to their children and over 2/3 want to see it banned, do you think actually we're using the wrong language and we should just say that this isn't something that's safe for children, for children and young people, and that they should be over 16 before they're allowed exposure to these platforms?
I think part of our the reason why we don't think a ban is the way to get is partly because, as you say, I think it's going to lead people to believe that it's impossible to access these apps, and as we're seeing in Australia, it's actually not really enforceable or effective as a measure. So I think the better conversation is around where are young people spending their time and what is the evidence of certain features and functionalities of those platforms that we may want to look at. I think a ban is misleading in that sense. I don't think it's a helpful language because we don't think it's going to be something that's actually possible in practice. I do just want to go back to some of the things we said, which is that one of the things even DSIT published quite recently, they, under the last Secretary of State, undertook a year-long study of the available evidence, and they also concluded that there is no strong, robust, concrete evidence of harm either way. It doesn't mean we shouldn't have a conversation about people's concerns, and I think you can see that we've made huge investments and huge strides around safety online, but I do think that what the government is trying to do around the evidence gathering for where is the best and most effective policy intervention is the right approach.
I think that evidence argument is on very shaky ground now. I mean, I think the evidence of most parents in the country who would say that their children are spending too much time online would suggest that there is a problem. Anyway, I'd just like to move on to the problems with the Australian ban, which you mentioned, Rebecca. So the E-Safety Commissioner in Australia has criticised practices from platforms, including both, apologies Laura, we'll come to roadblocks in a second, platforms including both TikTok and Meta, for repeatedly messaging children who are under 16 to try and encourage them to age assure themselves for the platform, using unreliable facial recognition software, letting children repeatedly try to age assure if they fail at the first attempt, and making it hard to report age-restricted accounts. So I'll start with you, Alistair, briefly. How would you respond to these criticisms?
So I think we, as I say, have a multi-layered approach to age assurance that represents the investment that we've made into AI models and signals that we can use on our platform, and at the moment we use that for 13, which is our cut-off point, and for identifying whether or not people are, the age that they say they are, under 18 or otherwise. And from an Australian perspective, it's what we're using plus some additional aspects to allow them to appeal for under 16 and stopping use there. I think this goes back to the point, which is a really important part that the consultation needs to establish and address, which is what is the collective view from an age assurance perspective about how much confidence you want. You talked there about the idea of unreliable facial age estimation technology. That's an element that is at use under the OSA for pornographic sites here in the UK, and there are obvious challenges and trade-offs that you begin to make between privacy and safety when you go down the route of using that as a sort of sole way. We have an approach that at the moment uses your activity on the platform to estimate whether or not you're the age that you say that you are, and when you want access to riskier features such as going live for the very first time, we have a more robust series of things, and we ask for ID check or other facial age estimation. But it does show that there is kind of a variety of different drawbacks and benefits to different versions of age verification. I think it's a critical element that the consultation will have to opine on, because whether or not you set a limit at 16 or you set different experiences under the age of 16, it does come back to the level of confidence that you can have in people being the age that they are, that they say they are.
Would you say that TikTok is guilty of messaging children under 16 to try and get them to age assure and to let them repeatedly try if they...
I think what my understanding is that what that referred to was, as we were coming out up to the period of the ban, we were encouraging people to verify at the higher level if they were over the age of 16. If people had lied and we hadn't caught that, then that results in them being messaged. But obviously then the additional level is then aimed at identifying that.
Yes, similar. So as I mentioned previously, we use AI detection. So even if you've lied about your age, we try and work out, we try and detect that, and then we'll age gate you into then proving your age. We had done, we use YOTI as guided by the OSA for facial recognition, but also document verification. We obviously try and take a proportionate approach to those higher levels of asking people for their ID for obvious reasons. We also know many people don't have any formal ID, so we have to have a sort of multi-layered system. And we're also we are a founder of a project called the Open Age Initiative, which is looking at having age verified once on your device, because again, similar to what I said to you previously about trying to think how do we make this as easy as possible for parents in particular, and we think that device level and app store level age verification, where people who run app stores know the bill payer of that phone and have access to information that we wouldn't have, and can then block at the app store. Not to say that we would then stop doing what we do, that doesn't remove our responsibility, but there's a missing piece of the jigsaw there, which we think for any steps that the government takes as a result of the consultation, you're absolutely right, accurate age assurance or improving that is going to be really important. And it wasn't really in the Online Safety Act, and Ofcom have done a bit of work looking at it, but we think that is a really important part of this conversation to absolutely address what you're raising.
Okay, thank you. And Laura, I'd just like to turn briefly to Roblox, because I know that you haven't been covered by the ban in Australia, and there has been criticism that the Australian ban doesn't go far enough, and that the harms of sites such as Roblox are comparable to social media, even though I appreciate you say you're not a social media site and you don't share the same harms. I would challenge the idea that Roblox is not addictive from what I've heard firsthand from many friends and colleagues whose children are fairly addicted to it. So how would you respond to that? Do you expect that Roblox would be covered by a ban if it came in the UK?
So I think, again, the reason we weren't included in the Australia ban was because of the fundamentally different design and purpose of our platform, in the way that, we are much more about the active play piece and not providing those kind of social media services and features. One of the things I think that, again, the different types of experience that young people have when they're on our platform, I think a blanket ban that captured us would really remove access to a lot of educational and creative experience for a lot of young people, particularly here in the UK. We also, we're concerned about pushing young people to less regulated environments. We know, by example, from what's happened in Australia, that a lot of young people were using VPNs and still going into these sort of less regulated spaces. I think, we're not pushing back on regulation. We do understand that there is a need for it, but we really want to make sure that the regulation follows all of the evidence around, what features are appropriate and how young people are actually using these different platforms.
So if a ban were to be based on features and functionality rather than a platform, which is why Australia chose to do it, then it could well include Roblox, for example, banning anything that would allow anyone under 16 to be direct messaged by a bad actor.
So we've already rolled out a huge number of safety and policy updates, 145 I think in the last year and a half. Most recently, just last week, we announced Roblox Kids and Roblox Select. So this is our new, as I say, a age-based framework for making sure that young people are having the best experience for their different ages. This follows on from the previous work we did around facial age estimation, which we launched in January, which really narrows down the communication around who children can talk to, putting them in buckets with children who are a similar age. They can talk with children just a little older and a little younger, but it would be in the same way that, for example, they would probably hang out with kids from a year above them in the playground at school. We're also now adding this age-gated access, so being much stricter about the types of games and experiences that they can experience. And also, rolling out additional tools for parents to have more oversight up until age 16, and tools where they can, help restrict or add communication to trusted friends. So, for example, that, adults being able to make contact with an unknown teenager, for example, would not be able to happen. It's mandatory facial age estimation. If somebody chooses to join the platform and chooses not to undergo facial age estimation, they will automatically be defaulted to our lowest settings, which allow no communication with anyone else on the platform.
Okay. And you're confident that could never happen, that a bad actor couldn't contact somebody who is under 16 through your platform?
I mean, one thing I think is important to acknowledge is that bad actors come in all ages. So we have a range of other tools that are constantly running across the platform at the same time. We know that peer-to-peer abuse happens on all platforms. And so age rating, a facial age estimation wouldn't tackle that. We have other tools such as our AI tool Sentinel, which is a grooming detection, and it picks up contextual conversations. And we proactively report. We work very closely with law enforcement. If we detect any signals, we will escalate those to law enforcement, both here in the UK and through NECMEC. We're also members of Project Lantern. I believe my colleagues here who are speaking are also members, which is a signal sharing project run by the Tech Coalition, where if we detect signals about particular bad actors, we are able to share information to prevent them from being on the platforms collectively. And that also helps us when it comes to things like people setting up old accounts. We're able to track them and ban them across the platform.
There was a expert who recently advised parents that they should be with their children at all times while they were on Roblox, because it isn't a safe platform for young people, in the opinion of that expert. How would you answer that?
I mean, I would push back on that. Millions of people do have a really safe and healthy experience on Roblox all the time. I think for the younger users on the platform, particularly, we do appreciate on Roblox, we do have a younger audience than a lot of the other platforms, and we take that very seriously. But we also encourage, as I say, for the younger ones, this might be their first experience of going into an online space. So we provide, the kind of safety tools and it is safe for young people, but every child is different, and we encourage parental involvement. This is not about us pushing responsibility back on parents. We want to work in partnership with parents so that they have the tools, they feel that they are still in charge of their child's experience, and as their child develops and grows more skills, builds more resilience in these spaces, then the parent can kind of sit back a little bit further and let their child go and explore more. But I think in those very early stages, I think it's just, I think it's a real positive for families to kind of walk this together. Particularly, somewhere like Roblox, it's actually fun to sit down as a family and play together. And it's a really good opportunity for those kind of conversations that, otherwise you might have to sort of sit down and have a conversation about online safety, whereas this actually offers a natural place to do that.
Thanks. I'm going to go to Chris next.
Thank you. So at present, children can only consent to have their data processed by companies at the age of 13. And obviously young children need parental consent. But the government's consultation has proposed to raise this age of consent. So would you support those changes? Rebecca looked at me first, so I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a different thing to the ban that is around the age at which we can process a person's data without their parental consent. I think sometimes people think it's the same way of getting a different way of getting to the same outcome. We obviously comply with the GDPR in this country. If they did raise the age of data processing consent, it would obviously capture many businesses in the UK who are data processing under the GDPR far beyond social media companies. So we don't have a strong opinion about whether that's the right measure or not. I think I guess the point is some people conflate it slightly with it would result in a ban, and that's not my understanding of how that might work.
I agree. Okay, Alistair.
I really don't have much more to add to what Rebecca said. I think that pretty much represents our view too.
Laura, do you want to add anything on?
So again, it applies slightly differently to us because we already don't process the data of young people, and we actually already have parental involvement and parental consent for most features up until age 16.
Okay. It's me again, isn't it? Yeah, so just on the government consultation then, it asks about restricting or banning the following features. So disappearing messages, live streaming, location sharing, sending, receiving images and videos, obviously that contain nudity. And you've mentioned some of these things, but what restrictions do you have on your site on these features already? And
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. So as I say, we've taken the few that you called out there. You can't access them if you're under 16. So direct messages is a good example. We're not defaulted off, but you can opt in. We are just direct messages that are not available to under 16s at all. Live streaming is another good example. You can't go live until you're 18, and that's an area of our site that you have to then provide a greater level of age verification via facial age estimation or digital ID proof and so on. I think that goes back to the point that I was making about trying to make sure that we're both understanding the evidence and designing our platform in a way that provides an age-appropriate experience, but make sure that the most risky features are prevented from being accessible. So the examples that you called out there would reflect
location settings as well. You can't do if you're under.
So location settings. We've only recently introduced a kind of nearby element to what you see, but in terms of people uploading content, the content that you upload if you're under the age of 16 is not available in other people's For You feed. So again, you are set by private as default, and so the only people who will be able to see what you're